The charity gala was supposed to crown Malik Adebayo. Instead, the entire room forgot how to breathe the moment he lifted his glass, smiled for the cameras, and told his wife to step out of the frame. "Not this one, Zara," he said softly, with the kind of polished smile that only makes humiliation quieter. "This photo is for the people who built the company." The photographers laughed politely, assuming it was a joke. The woman in gold at his side moved closer to him anyway. His mother nodded from the front table, as if a decision had finally been made in public. And Zara, standing in a deep emerald gown with a slim indigo cuff around her wrist, didn't argue. She didn't ask questions. She didn't force a smile. She simply turned her head and looked past the chandeliers, past the cameras, past her husband's hand resting too comfortably around another woman's waist, straight toward the keynote speaker waiting by the stage. Elias Okonkwo, African founder, billion-dollar CEO, one of the most respected business names on the continent. And the second his eyes landed on the bracelet around Zara's wrist, his whole expression changed. Because he knew that cuff. He knew the woman wearing it. And in that single, silent moment, Malik Adebayo's perfect night began to collapse without a single raised voice. The Baobab Grand Hotel in Lagos had been transformed for the foundation's annual charity gala. Soft gold light poured from chandeliers large enough to make every guest look important. The ballroom smelled faintly of white lilies, polished wood, expensive perfume, and the kind of money that never has to announce itself. Round tables dressed in ivory cloth filled the room beneath high, carved ceilings. Crystal glasses caught the light. String music floated from the corner stage in smooth, careful waves. Everywhere you looked, there were tailored suits, silk gowns, foundation trustees, developers, tech investors, non-profit founders, and old families whose names had been stitched into every new building for the last 20 years. This was not an ordinary room. This was the kind of room that decided whose names would be remembered. And tonight, according to the printed program resting on every plate, the night belonged to Malik Adebayo. Honoree of the Year, visionary developer, a rising force in urban infrastructure and community investment. His photograph was centered on the cover, in black tie, smiling the smile of a man who had grown very comfortable receiving what others helped him reach. His mother, Mrs. Tola Adebayo, arrived early enough to inspect the seating. She wore champagne silk and carried herself like a woman who believed success was hereditary. She greeted trustees with warm hands and cold eyes, making it clear without saying so that her son's recognition tonight was not just an award. It was a confirmation, proof, arrival. And then there was Nadia Kamau, tall, beautiful, gold dress, sharp shoulders, smooth voice. She was introduced all evening as Malik's communications strategist, but the way she stood beside him erased every need for explanation. Her hand lingered on his sleeve too long. Her laughter arrived too quickly. Her eyes scanned the room with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed she would soon be standing exactly where she wanted to stand. Zara sat 2 seats away from her own husband. She wore no diamonds, no dramatic train, no glittering designer label shouting across the room. Just a beautifully tailored emerald gown, small gold earrings, and an indigo beaded cuff on her wrist that had been woven by her aunt in Kumasi years before. She had worn it on one of the most important afternoons of her life. Tonight, she wore it again. Most people in that ballroom did not know who Zara was. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was assuming quiet meant powerless. 7 years earlier, before Malik's name appeared on glossy invitations and donor walls, Zara Adebayo was already the person people called when they needed one room to speak to another. She worked from a modest office above a bookstore in Yaba. No receptionist, no glass doors, no gold sign outside. Just a wooden desk, a kettle that whistled too loudly, a laptop with 3 missing keys, and shelves filled with slim binders marked in neat handwriting. Donors, founders, trustees, municipal contacts, women-led ventures, education grants, renewable pilots, social housing. Zara was not flashy. She did not dominate panels or chase microphones. She listened, remembered details, made introductions with precision, and moved people toward each other before they even realized they were standing on opposite sides of the same opportunity. She built trust quietly. And trust, when built correctly, becomes a kind of currency no market can imitate. One of the first people she ever helped was a young founder named Elias Okonkwo. At the time, Elias had a logistics software prototype, a laptop that overheated every 20 minutes, and just enough bus fare to make it across the city and back if nobody delayed him. He had flown in from Enugu with a dream bigger than his savings and a mind too disciplined to complain out loud. He met Zara at a community innovation roundtable where most investors looked at him and saw risk. Zara looked at him and saw architecture. She asked him 6 questions. Then she opened her diary. Not a business plan, not a slide deck, not a polished pitch memo. A small blue diary filled with names, arrows, side notes, remembered birthdays, donor preferences, and short codes only she understood. She made 2 calls that evening, a 3rd call the next morning. Within 3 weeks, Elias had his first pilot meeting. Within 6 months, he had capital. Within 3 years, he had scale. Within 7, he had built Umoja Grid Systems into one of the continent's most respected smart infrastructure firms. He offered Zara equity once. She declined with a smile. "Help someone else when you can," she told him. That was Zara's way. She was rarely the loudest person in the room. She was the reason the room existed in the first place. Malik entered her life much later, at a public-private housing fundraiser in Victoria Island. He was handsome in a polished, easy way. He listened well. He made older trustees feel younger, and younger founders feel chosen. He offered to carry event materials when a volunteer failed to show. He remembered people's names. He sent thank you messages. He noticed Zara's calm before he noticed her beauty, and that mattered to her. For the first 2 years, marriage suited them, or at least that was how it looked from the outside. Malik had ambition, and Zara had access built on years of credibility. She introduced him carefully, not recklessly. One donor at a time, one planning advisor at a time, one board dinner, one housing conversation, one infrastructure breakfast, one quiet recommendation at a time. She did not drag him upward. She simply opened doors he still needed to learn how to walk through. He prospered quickly, faster than even he expected. Every invitation led to another. Every handshake deepened into an opportunity. Every opportunity turned into a contract, a partnership, a speech, an interview, a profile, a feature, a bigger office, a better car, a stronger name. Malik loved progress, but over time, he started loving applause even more. And his mother noticed. Mrs. Tola Adebayo believed a successful man should be seen beside a certain type of woman. A woman who sparkled publicly. A woman who dominated photographs. A woman whose presence proved the size of a man's arrival before he said a word. Zara, in her eyes, was too quiet, too plain, too thoughtful, too content to stand outside the spotlight while larger personalities filled it. At Sunday lunches, Tola would smile over soup and say things that sounded polite until you listened carefully. Zara is sweet. She is very simple. She does not understand how high-level rooms work. A man growing this fast must be represented properly. Malik laughed them off at first. Then he stopped defending Zara. Then he started absorbing the criticism as if it had always been his own. The shift came slowly. A delayed introduction here. A board dinner she was not invited to there. A new PR advisor named Nadia who appeared in every conversation. Then a second change. Malik began retelling his success story without Zara in it. He started saying he had built his network from scratch. He started saying instinct had gotten him where he was. He started using the language of self-made men in rooms where half the people owed their first serious introductions to his wife. Zara noticed. Quiet people notice everything. She noticed the way Malik angled his phone away during dinner. The way Nadia's name arrived too often and too smoothly inside business updates. The way Tola spoke about presentation and public fit, as if marriage were a branding exercise. The way Malik looked at Zara now, not with tenderness, but with the mild impatience of someone who had started seeing loyalty as furniture. She said little, not because she did not understand, because she did. 5 weeks before the gala, Zara found the draft presentation. She had gone into Malik's study to place a signed document on his desk. The laptop was open. A slideshow file glowed on the screen. She did not intend to read it. Then she saw Nadia's photo on one of the slides. So she stood still. The presentation had been prepared for the gala's donor after session. It charted Malik's journey in clean, expensive slides. Vision, scale, relationships, strategic growth, social impact, market confidence. Each slide simplified years of borrowed trust into his own genius. Then came the final one. A black background, gold lettering. Special acknowledgement to Nadia Kamau, whose brilliance, grace, and strategic insight helped shape this new chapter. Zara looked at the screen without blinking. That might have hurt enough on its own, but there was more. In a notes window beside the presentation sat a message thread between Malik and Nadia. Casual, confident, careless. Tonight has to signal the transition. People already see it. She won't make noise. My mother says the room is ready. Zara read those lines once, then again. She closed the laptop exactly the way she had found it. She walked to the kitchen, poured tea into a mug, held it with both hands until it cooled. Then she went to the old cabinet by the dining room wall and pulled out a flat storage box she had not touched in months. Inside were appointment ledgers, early donor lists, meeting cards, recommendation letters, handwritten notes from board members, and one small blue diary with years of careful connections inside. Her whole career fit quietly into documents no one had ever thought to respect properly. She placed the indigo cuff beside the diary. Then she made one call. Layla Mensa, event strategist, university friend, sharp memory, cleaner instincts than most lawyers. When Layla answered, Zara did not explain everything. She asked one question. Who is giving the keynote? Layla checked the gala sheet. Elias Okonkwo, she said. There was a pause. Not confusion. Construction. Zara closed her eyes for one breath. Then she said, I need one adjustment to the program, and I need it handled with dignity. Layla did not ask why. Good friends know when silence is part of the plan. The week before the gala was the quietest week of Malik's marriage. Zara cooked dinner, pressed his suits, answered his questions gently, listened when he rehearsed his acceptance remarks, even smiled when Tola came over and spoke all evening about photographers, investors, and how some women simply understood the burden of standing beside greatness while others did not. Nadia posted a fitting photo in gold with the caption, "Big night loading." Malik liked it within 30 seconds. The morning of the gala, Zara dressed without rushing. Emerald gown, soft makeup, clean bun, gold earrings, indigo cuff. She slipped 3 folded documents into her clutch, though she suspected she would not need them. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, Malik looked up from his phone and nodded once. You look fine, he said. Fine. Not beautiful. Not elegant. Not, thank you for standing beside me all these years. Fine. Zara smiled politely and picked up her shawl. By the time they arrived at the Baobab Grand, the ballroom was already in motion. Trustees greeted Malik warmly. Cameras found him. Nadia appeared at his side almost immediately in gold silk with shoulders that shimmered under the light. Tola glowed from the front table. Layla moved through the room with an earpiece and a face too professional to reveal anything. And Elias Okonkwo stood near the stage, reviewing note cards he would never end up using. The opening speeches passed in a blur of applause and polished language. A foundation chair praised public-private partnerships. A donor couple received applause. A scholarship reel played across the giant screen. String music softened the transitions. Waiters flowed between tables with impossible grace. Then came the photo break. Malik was called toward the sponsor wall. Cameras flashed. Nadia stepped beside him. Tola waved for a better angle. Someone gestured for Zara to join. For 1 second, it looked as though ordinary dignity might still be preserved. Then Malik smiled at the photographers and said, lightly enough for outsiders to mistake it for style, "Not this one. This shot is for the people who built the company." Nadia shifted closer. Tola adjusted her shawl with visible approval. Several guests heard it. Enough for the moment to land. Zara stopped where she was. The air in front of her felt strangely thin. But she did not plead for place. She did not embarrass herself trying to stand where she had already been erased. Instead, she turned her face toward the stage. And there was Elias, watching. Not the broad, social smile of a keynote speaker preparing for a polished evening. Watching. His gaze dropped to her wrist, to the indigo cuff. Recognition struck him so fast it almost looked like pain, because he remembered exactly where he had seen it. Across a wooden table years ago, while a woman no one had heard of opened a diary and changed the direction of his life. Malik saw none of this. He was too busy posing. Back at the table, Zara sat quietly. She folded her hands in her lap and listened as the room reset itself around the incident, the way wealthy rooms often do. Quickly, efficiently, as if discomfort can be smoothed into linen and carried away. But something had shifted. A few people began looking at Zara differently. Layla passed the table once without stopping. Elias moved to the podium, and the ballroom lights dimmed. He began like all CEOs begin. Gratitude, partnership, vision, shared future, infrastructure, access, community-led innovation, the foundation's role in making ideas durable. His voice was calm, controlled, professional. Then, midway through the second page of prepared remarks, he stopped. He set the papers down. He looked over the room slowly. And when he spoke again, his voice had changed. "There are nights," he said, "when a room gathers to celebrate visible success. But sometimes visible success is standing on top of invisible labor, invisible wisdom, and invisible loyalty. And if we do not name that honestly, then celebration becomes theft." The room went still. Even the waiters paused. Elias rested one hand on the podium and continued. "Many years ago, before Umoja Grid had investors, before our first pilot, before any magazine had reason to print my name, I met a woman in a modest office above a bookstore. I brought her an idea and a problem. She gave me attention, honesty, and introductions that changed my life." People shifted in their seats. Malik's smile faded by one careful degree. Elias looked directly at Zara. "She wore an indigo cuff on her wrist that day," he said. "She is wearing it tonight." Now the whole room turned, not in curiosity alone, in recognition. Because everyone understood this part. The story had become personal. Elias stepped away from the podium, not dramatic, not theatrical, just enough to break the distance between stage and truth. "She made calls for me when I had nothing to offer her in return. She opened doors without asking for equity, applause, or a title. She did the same for many others in this city. Some of them are in this ballroom tonight." Layla signaled discreetly from the side. The screen behind Elias changed. Not to a logo, not to a donor reel. To scanned meeting records, dated introductions, partnership notes, and archived acknowledgments drawn from foundation submissions and old correspondence. Names, dates, routing notes, referrals, early sponsor connections, housing consortium introductions, board recommendations, grant dinners, pilot invitations. Again and again, one name appeared in the chain before Malik Adebayo's rise. Zara Mensah. Not once, repeatedly. The silence in the room deepened. Elias didn't need to accuse anyone. The evidence was cleaner than accusation. He continued. "When people discuss Malik Adebayo's network, his access, his donor relationships, his path through rooms like this, they should know those paths were not built in isolation. They were opened, strengthened, and protected by someone whose work has gone unnamed for too long." Malik sat rigid. Nadia's hands left his sleeve. Tola's expression hardened into something between disbelief and alarm. Then Elias said the words that ended the night. "Mrs. Zara Adebayo, would you please stand?" Zara did, slowly, calmly, without spectacle. The emerald fabric caught the light. The indigo cuff rested quiet and certain against her skin. She did not look at Malik. She did not look at Nadia. She did not look at Tola. She looked at Elias. And he bowed his head slightly. Not as a performance, as respect. One of the foundation trustees stood first. Dr. Njeri Okafor, education donor, known for never wasting words. Zara introduced me to my first community housing roundtable, she said clearly. I would not be serving on this board without her. Then another woman stood. Abina Boteng, nonprofit chair. She brought our water project to its first private backer. No press, no fee. Just one call and a follow-up note. Then another, Ruth Ndlovu, urban equity advisor. She connected our cooperative to partners who now claim they discovered us. They did not. Zara did. One by one, the room reassembled its memory. And memory, once public, becomes impossible to push back into silence. Applause began near the side wall. Then another table joined. Then another. Soon, the whole ballroom was standing. Not for Malik. For Zara. For the woman who had entered the room nearly erased and now stood at its center without asking for it. She did not cry, but her eyes softened. Elias spoke one last time before returning to his prepared remarks, though there was nothing prepared about the weight of the moment anymore. There is a difference, he said, between being seen and being valued. Tonight, we will not confuse the two. When Zara sat down again, Malik still had not moved. He looked like a man trying to understand how a story he had edited so carefully had suddenly restored its missing pages. Nadia withdrew, not dramatically, but efficiently. She shifted her chair half a foot away, stopped leaning in, stopped smiling for cameras, stopped touching his arm. By the time dessert was served, she had become all angles and distance. The posture of a person recalculating risk in real time. Tola tried once to recover control. She stood, crossed toward Zara, and said quietly, "You could have handled this privately." Zara turned to her with the calm of someone who no longer feared being misunderstood. "I did," she said, "for years." Then she lifted her glass of water and took a small sip, as if the conversation had ended long before Tola arrived. The remainder of the gala continued, only because public events are stubborn things. The jazz resumed. Dessert appeared. People sat down. Plates clinked. Speeches happened. But the real program had already ended. Everything after Elias's acknowledgement felt like cleanup after weather. Guests left in thoughtful clusters. Some approached Zara softly, with gratitude and embarrassment mixed together. Some approached Elias. Some avoided Malik's table entirely. By the entrance, Nadia slipped into the night before Malik could stop her. No dramatic argument, no confrontation, just the simple disappearance of someone who had only ever planned to stand near power, never under its collapse. Outside, cameras that had arrived for celebration now waited for reaction. Malik hated that most of those reactions were not his. Within a week, the consequences began quietly, which is how real consequences usually begin. A planned partnership lunch was postponed, then canceled. A donor who once answered on the second ring sent a short message saying the timing was no longer suitable. An infrastructure consortium requested clarification on relationship claims made in Malik's recent profile materials. 2 board dinners happened without him. An advisory seat he assumed was secure suddenly required review. Nobody issued a public scandal statement. Nobody needed to. Rooms like that do not always punish loudly. Sometimes they simply stop opening. At home, Malik tried to repair the damage with the tools men like him often reach for too late. Flowers, long messages, explanations disguised as apologies. Things got complicated. I was under pressure. You know my mother influences me. Nadia meant nothing. You should have told me you were hurting. That last one sat in Zara's inbox like a joke too tired to laugh at. She answered none of them. Because the deepest injury had never been Nadia, or Tola, or even the photograph. It was the quiet conversion of her labor into someone else's legend. The way years of loyalty had been repackaged as background material inside a story where she was expected to smile from the edge. 3 days after the gala, Zara met with a family attorney. 1 week later, she moved into a bright townhouse in Lekki with wide windows, a small balcony herb shelf, and enough silence to feel like medicine. She placed the blue diary on her new desk. Beside it, the indigo cuff. Then she made tea and opened the windows. No ceremony, no revenge speech, no social media statement, just air. Malik called 17 times the first week. Tola came by once and found the security code changed. Nadia vanished from his life at the exact speed with which she had entered it. Elias, however, wrote a letter. Handwritten, simple. He thanked Zara for helping him when success had not yet made him easy to bet on. He apologized for not recognizing sooner that she had been standing in a room built partly from her own invisible work. And he asked whether she would consider joining Umoja Grid Systems as a strategic partnerships advisor for its Pan-African social infrastructure arm. Not as a favor, as overdue alignment. Zara read the letter twice, then set it down and cried for the first time in months. Not because she was broken, because being seen properly after a long season of distortion can feel like being returned to yourself. She accepted. 6 months later, Zara sat on a stage in Kigali at a Continental Innovation Forum discussing equitable partnerships in urban development. Her voice was still soft, still measured, still impossible to rush. But now, people leaned in before she finished speaking. Not after. Before. Her name appeared on the program in full, not as someone's wife, not as an unnamed support system, as Zara Mensah Adebayo, Strategic Partnerships Advisor, Umoja Grid Systems. She wore white that day, and the indigo cuff. After the panel, a young founder approached her with a notebook and nervous hope in his eyes. He had a clean energy education idea and no serious network to speak of. Zara listened, asked questions, took notes. Then she smiled and said, "Send me your deck tonight. I know 2 people you should meet." Some people do not become smaller after heartbreak. They become clearer. Across town in Lagos, Malik sat in an office that still looked successful from the outside. Good furniture, glass walls, framed award, quiet assistant. But the rhythm had changed. Calls did not return as quickly. Invitations came slower. Conversations that once warmed instantly now required explanation. He had not lost everything, but he had lost the illusion that he had built it alone. And once that illusion breaks, every mirror becomes more honest than before. On certain evenings, he scrolled through gala photographs posted by guests. There was one image he returned to often. Zara, standing beneath chandelier light, calm in emerald, the whole room rising around her. No anger on her face, no triumph either. Just peace. The expression of someone who had stopped begging history to pronounce her correctly, because truth had already done it for her. He would stare at that photo for a long time, then lock his phone and sit in the silence he had created. Meanwhile, Zara's new home grew softer around her. Books stacked on side tables, fresh flowers in the kitchen, warm light in the mornings. Layla visiting on Sundays with pastries and stories. Work that felt honest. Rooms where gratitude arrived before extraction. Partnerships built with clear names and cleaner terms. One rainy Saturday, Zara opened the blue diary and turned to a fresh page. She wrote 3 new names: a youth arts founder from Ibadan, a health tech team from Nairobi, a women-led housing cooperative in Accra. Then she paused, touched the indigo cuff, and smiled to herself. Not the smile people wear for cameras, not the smile women perform to keep rooms comfortable. A private smile. The kind that belongs to a life finally back in its rightful hands. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding up half the ceiling. Sometimes what looks like softness is structure. Sometimes what people ignore is the very thing keeping their world connected. And sometimes, when truth finally speaks, it does not shout. It simply says the right name in the right room at the right time. That night at the charity gala was supposed to honor Malik Adebayo. But long after the flowers were cleared, the lights dimmed, and the music ended, people remembered something else entirely. They remembered the woman in emerald, the indigo cuff, the CEO who put away his prepared speech, and the moment an entire ballroom realized they had mistaken silence for absence. Zara did not force revenge. She did not chase spectacle. She did not break the room. She simply stood inside the truth until the room had no choice but to rearrange itself around her. And when it did, she walked forward with both hands free. If this story stayed with you, pass it to someone who needs the reminder. Being overlooked does not make you ordinary. Sometimes it only means your value has been living ahead of other people's understanding. And when your moment comes, you will not need noise. You will only need truth.